What's up, mortgage coach community? Dave Savage going live with Todd Ballenger. I like to call the professor because he's actually a professor at North Carolina University or University of North Carolina.
Yep, UNC.
UNC, baby. You guys have an awesome lacrosse program. In case you didn't know that, I'm sure you do. So Todd is the man when it comes to mortgage professionals working with financial advisors. This guy knows more than most mortgage professionals will ever know. And he's got a long history of helping financial advisors get into the mortgage business. He helped Ameriprise build and start their mortgage division. There's a number of other large institutions he's done that with. And then there's a lot of companies that he consults with to help train their loan officers how to work with CPAs and financial planners. In fact, I think he's currently working with Neo Home Loans to build some curriculum. He's got a certification program called Certified Liability Advisor, CLA. We'll be sure to tell you about how to get signed up for that. But Todd has volunteered to take some of the things that you could learn in CLA. Of course, it's going to be a more comprehensive training. It's not like we're replacing what's in that platform with what we're going to do today, but we're going to do some free education. He's going to share some key concepts with the mortgage coach community because he just wants to help loan officers be more valuable to consumers and help consumers be smarter with their liability decisions. So with that said, today we're going to focus on how does a financial advisor present and how do they think? There's some key concepts. They just think differently than a loan officer. We're going to get into those. And then how they actually present strategies, products, information, insights, recommendations. It's different than how a loan officer does that. So Todd, anything you want to say before we just get into the class at hand?
No, man, I'm looking forward to it as always.
Well, let's rock it out. Teach us how to think and present like a financial advisor.
Well, this is our kind of second class in this series. So if you missed the first one, we talk a lot about how we started out as financial advisors, right? Like I got my securities license, my insurance license, and our company was a financial planning and advisory firm. So I started on the asset side of the balance sheet and started learning to be a financial advisor and was a financial advisor for a number of years before we crossed the balance sheet to become a lender. So a lot of our growth, a lot of what we experienced initially was the fact that we came in with this whole different setup. We didn't do things the way most people did things. And one of the first things that I noticed, and I didn't know this until I started hiring loan officers, is that their approach to engaging with a consumer was filling out a 1003, the loan application, right? Collecting data. But it was an interview of sorts, right? But it wasn't the way that a financial advisor thinks about an interview, where you're really identifying what are the key problems. And there's two types of problems, the known and the unknown. And that's really important because when you think that way, right, you're realizing that the real value is not just solving their known problems, but presenting unknown considerations that they haven't thought about, and then presenting how that's a problem and how they can help you solve. That's where you create a lot of value, right? So if you're going through a loan application, one of the things you can do is start to think about, okay, I know that this credit's going to be a problem we're going to have to overcome. That's a problem in getting a loan, right? But I'm talking about the unknown problem, like they want a 30-year fix and they're going to be in the house for 5 years. That might not be the best decision. That could cost them a lot of extra money and payment and things. So you're thinking about this, and that was the way we approach things. But as a financial advisor, there were 3 steps that happened. There was an interview, there was a conversation, and then there was a presentation of the results, what the advisors call the thud. And when I say the thud, it's a digital thud now, but it used to be a large notebook. I actually have several of them here in my cabinet that I've gotten over the years. They're like 3-ring binders with 50, 100, 200 pages in them sometimes. But the key is you're illustrating what? That you heard what they had to say, and then you're talking about the conversations where you differentiate yourself, what we do and how we do it differently. And then that thud is the results where you're saying, here's what I'm going to do for you. It's a visual, compelling thing. No one was doing that in the lending industry when we started out, and that was the way financial advisors work. So we just started working that way. That's part of how you and I met originally back in the day, right? I was working on spreadsheets to be able to do that visual presentation of before and after, and you were developing, Wow Tools and Mortgage Coach. And it was like, hey, we need this in the lending industry because this is something that we really loved. So that's just from a starting out standpoint. I'll kind of share, this is something from the course.
So Todd, I want to insert something real quick,
man.
because I think the way you described everything that you just did, a lot of loan officers like, got it, check, next. But I think like a new loan officer, and I always want to help new loan officers coming into the business. In fact, we have a new loan officer playbook. It's an article in my LinkedIn profile called New Loan Officer Playbook. Check it out. I want to connect the dots, because when he described, I was working on the asset side of the balance sheet. That's any interest bearing accounts. That's the stock market. That's anything where there's money in the bank, earning interest, or just money in the bank. Asset side. Liability side would be mortgage, which there's about 16.5 trillion in mortgage debt. And a lot of loan officers, when they get into the business, they're like, oh, my job is to help people get new loans, which is about, last year it was almost 4 trillion. This year it's going to be closer to 3 trillion. But I want you to think of that liability size as all of the mortgages, because you're doing a loan and then you're managing those mortgages to create a client for life. So it's, and I also want you to start thinking of your clients. It's not only like, hey, how many loans did I do? How much did I do this year? It's, hey, how many mortgages do I have under management? In HomeBot, how many mortgages am I managing? Annual reviews, how much in mortgages am I managing every year for my families? But remember, that side of the liability, it's your student loans. If you're new to the mortgage business, you might have student loans. If you have a car that's financed, it's car loan. If you carry credit card balances, if you financed your Peloton, that's the liability side. So I just want to make sure I'm connected that up for new loan officers. And the thing that's unique about Todd is you're a loan officer. We want you to redefine who you are as, I'm a liability manager. And so that you can partner with asset managers to better serve families. And then for you loan officers out there, it means more loans, and we're talking about a lot of new loans, could be 100 new loans a year, just from being strategic about this. So keep it going, Todd.
Yeah, you got it. When you talked about, us sort of being that the guru in that, working with the advisor space, this applies to everyone that you interact with, though. If you're sitting down with a client, I can tell you this style of presenting, that having a formal interview process where you're both collecting information and there's a dialogue and a conversation that is your stump speech on what you do and how you do it and why you're so different, and then presenting those results in a way that there's a buy-in that this is something I want to do. In the financial planning space, you typically pay for the results, and then you get a credit back if they implement the results, but there's real value in the results themselves, right? It's not just a freebie. In the mortgage space, that advice is given away freely, but not always the case in the advisor space. But if you're working with a realtor, if you're working with a consumer using this model, as you see on the screen, an interview, a formal conversation, and a results is part of what we teach you how to put together and structure and working with these different folks. What we didn't realize at the time, though, is by starting out this way, when we eventually migrated our practice beyond the realtor to working with financial advisors as a referral source, they got it, right? They got what we did. Because when you're having to overcome that fear of that advisor working with you, because they don't know what you're going to do for their client, and you can say, we do what you do. We interview the client. We understand their needs and what they're trying to accomplish. We present to them, right, in a conversation, what we do and how we do it, and differently. And then we show them a specific result that we believe we can generate for them in terms of savings or the ability to buy that home with X down or whatever. And we even give them options, 2 or 3 options that are possible scenarios. They realized that we had a formal process something, again, duplicatable, scalable, repeatable, which we talk about so much in the course, but you've got something now they can say, I get it. I get what you do. And why do they get it? Because it's what they do, right? And that confidence that comes through when you have a similar workflow and process is critically important when you start building out a large referral network of advisors. And yeah, we'll go into some more of this, but if you go through the course, we show you specifically the forms we use and how we would engage those advisors into having that conversation with their clients so that they were in a position to refer to us, which is really incredibly valuable when you start looking at them as a referral source.
Now, guys, if you have questions, put them down below. If you're watching this live in our Facebook group, we do have an audience. Ask any questions you have for Todd. We'll answer them live. If you're watching the recording of this in YouTube, put your questions down below, because this is going to be an ongoing series of interviews around key concepts and what do we call them? Skills. Like, there are skills that you need to have and habits, skills that we want to help you turn into habits that will help you be a more successful loan officer, and they'll make you radically more valuable to consumers. So Todd, I know you have some other ideas, but why don't you finish the how to present, and then let's get into how to think. I mean, I really love your homes versus house. Is it house versus home?
Sure.
Conversation, but finish the presentation part.
Yeah. So when you understand and you kind of buy into this sort of interview, consultation and presentation, the way they do it, one of the first steps in building a relationship with a financial advisor is to then do that for them, right? And say, for example, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to talk to you about your personal situation, right? And understand a little bit more about what you do. And in that process, talk to you about some of the key concepts, and we'll talk about some of the concepts we share with advisors in this deck here, which is part of the coursework that we give you to work through. And then as you do that, you present those results back to that advisor. Because again, if you refer an advisor to a restaurant and they won't go, they're not going to refer their clients. So we found a key gating process for building that relationship is, would you mind if I took a look at what you're doing today to see if there's a possible recommendation? And when we came back with that sort of shock and awe package, right, of that TCA, here's what you're doing. We could save you some money here. You could do this, or you could pull this much out if you wanted to and do this with it. Suddenly they got to see sort of that visual display of our value and our advice and what we could do for them. So when you're adopting this, one of the first things you want to do is find some people that you have a relationship with today and work through that process with them, because if they like it for themselves, I guarantee you they're going to be more likely to refer their clients to you.
Cool.
All right. So when you're talking to an advisor, talking to a client, Dave mentioned house versus home and some other concepts.
So by the way, I just want to make sure you're showing the slide you want. I'm seeing a bunch of different slides. I'm not seeing any one slide.
You got it. I'll drill in so it's easier to.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no worries. So what I was going to show you that, is like, this is an example of a conversation. This is something that we often use with financial advisors at client appreciation events. It was a precursor to getting them to think about managing liabilities. And what we did is we unpacked a series of items and things that they were not.
Todd, do you mean it to be all slides, or are you trying to show one slide?
Yeah. I'm backing out for a second, just conceptually. Okay. This is an example of a conversation. And what you're trying to do with something like this is you're helping them to understand how much they don't know about their house, right? And one of the questions we would often ask an advisor or the client is, if everything you thought to be true about your house wasn't, when would you want to know about it, right? When would you want to know that you were unknowingly and unnecessarily overpaying for the time that you spend living indoors, right? When would you want to know that? And most people would say, well, I don't want to know that right now. So those are really important gating questions that you can ask an advisor or a client. And as we went through this, one of the things that we found, and this came from just years of working with consumers and sitting there, and many of us have been in a situation where you're sitting there, you're across the desk from a man and a woman or a couple, and one of them is using the word house, and the other one is using the word home. And I found it interesting. And there was a conversation I was sitting there having with this couple, and he kept talking about the house. She kept talking about the home. And I said, look, do me a favor. When you say the word home, and I asked the wife, what are you thinking about when you say that? She started saying, well, family and friends and neighbors and, just freedom and, being able to do what we want to do and not rent or that kind of a thing. And I asked the husband, I said, husband, dude, when you hear the word house, you keep saying the word house, what are you thinking about? He's like, I'm thinking about the mortgage. I'm thinking about tax benefits and, I'm going to be working at home. So it's a place for me to work. And I'm thinking about, leverage and the mortgage credit, all that kind of stuff. Right. So something really hit me. And going forward, I shifted a key part of the way I spoke about the house and the home. And this is critical. And I've had people say that they started doing this and it really changed how they were being heard by the client. You see, the home doesn't exist. A home is an emotional experience you had in a house. All right. It's not real in the way a house is real. A house is a physical shelter. So you want to be very, very careful when you're talking to a couple. You don't say, I'm going to save you $225 a month on this home. Because what you've done is you've confused the house, the mortgage, and the savings with this emotional structure, right? This experience. And people don't hear that because you're tapping an emotional aspect of them versus the other. I know it sounds really geeky, but it's really, really cool when you start doing it. And this is a conversation we've had with advisors like, oh my God, you're totally right. My clients don't want to talk about their home, but they want to talk about their house. And so this is where you start to connect and build those relationships. And when you're talking about appreciation, tax benefits, down payment, the things that are associated with that house, use the word house. And then say, I can't wait for you to close and make a home with your family there. It's going to be an incredible experience. That's when you want to use that word home. You'll be shocked at the difference and the way people respond to you when you start to differentiate those two words.
So let me ask you if you agree with this thought.
Sure.
The realtor's job is to deliver the home, the lifestyle, and maybe your realtor should use home and tie that, but the mortgage professional who's managing, the financial side of that, the ROI side of that, should use house. Do you agree with that thinking?
Well, I mean, the realtor is selling a house. I mean, they're selling a physical structure that person's going to make a home in. If I was talking to a realtor, I'd say the same thing. We're in the business of selling a house, but when you buy that house, you're going to have an opportunity to really make a home, right? And again, the whole think of the home is anything related to, it really is. I got that image for a reason. It's left brain, right brain, right? The left brain, that creative side is where the home lives. The house is that right side, that analytical kind of a brain that we know is there and operating. So I'd say the same thing to a realtor, to a financial advisor. And this is part of this conversation for advisors, is to say, are you doing this with your clients? When you're talking to them about their home, are you talking to them about their home or their house? And we found most advisors were talking about the house because they were more on the financial side of things, but they were like, oh, wow, you're right. We always talk about, come in and let's look at your home or whatever. No. We're not looking at your home. You can't look at your home. I mean, that's for you to create and experience and develop. But we can look at your house. And there's a lot we can do to help you with the house. And we would say to people in this conversation, if I was talking to a couple, if it's okay right now with you, I'm going to show you something that's really going to have a big impact on your experience related to the house. By doing that, they could really look at the numbers and the savings and stuff and sort of for a moment separate, right, that I'm not talking about this emotional stuff over here. If you have more cash flow, you can have more fun, you can have more friends over, you can build a better home experience, but cash flow, that's part of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I totally love this house to home conversation, and I completely aligned that a financial advisor and a mortgage professional, we're playing in the house zone, but I don't know, I'm not sold on the fact that a real estate agent isn't, there's a time where the agent is talking about house, the analytics side of it, the price you're paying for it, the, appreciation rate. But, there's a time when it's, does this serve your hobbies? Is this,
yeah,
are you
yeah,
going to
yeah,
emotionally
yeah.
connect? And the realtor is kind of going from this house to home conversation. And in the mortgage professional, you and the financial advisor kind of live in the house sector. But the realtor
I'd agree.
is on both sides.
Yeah, it's like 80-20. I mean, I'd say the realtor is probably 80-20 home versus house. I'd say the financial advisor and the lender.
And also it probably varies on the personality of the consumer. If you're, selling the home to, a highly analytic accountant, it might be 80-20 house versus home. And if you're selling to an artist, Wright Brown artist, it might be 90-10 home to house. So I think, but anyways, it's a cool conversation to have. And my goal, guys, here at Mortgage Coach, when you're whether you're new, whether you're experienced, it's we think that you should be working with CPAs and financial planners. Not saying you shouldn't be working with realtors. They are the alpha partner. That is the key, still the number one referral partner when it comes to purchase business. But guys, there's, mortgage professionals, mortgage coaches are just leaving a lot of opportunity on the table by not being more sophisticated and working with more CPAs and financial planners. So Todd, I want to keep these things as close to 25 to 30 minute, quick hits from the professor. How do you want to wrap this up over the next 3 to 5 minutes?
All right. So we'll talk more about the dynamics of wealth, because this is something that's really important to understand, the house and wealth. But, if we just looked at, like you said, the awareness, if I'll go back over to house versus home for a second and look at the awareness that you just sort of brought in. If you're sitting there with an artist and they're 90-10 home and they're talking about home, and like I remember, an artist who had a pretty large inheritance and she wanted to pay cash for the house, right? But she was talking about home. And so she was talking about security and how she wanted to have the house paid for and all this kind of stuff. And as long as we talked about home, I could never get her to understand the impact of paying cash for that house versus, say, putting down 20% and giving the other 80% of the inheritance, because about, almost all of her inheritance was going to be used to buy this house. Once she met with an advisor and they started talking, she realized, wow, I actually have more security. I have more wealth creation. I have all these other things I really want. But she was getting tied up. So just that awareness of starting to think about this can have a huge impact. And that impact is going to be one of wealth. And we can talk about this in our next thing. And, I'll just wrap it up with, this, and we can go into this in more detail, that wealth is it's a critical component, but it's always down the road to some extent. People ultimately live lives of cash flow. And that is another key awareness that we started to realize when we started working with financial advisors and started working with this ourselves. That being that, I can show you that, say, in a total cost analysis, that this decision could save you $180,000. But it might be that I'm doing that by saving you $250 a month. And that $250 a month over 30 years becomes, this really big number. But people really live lives of cash flow, and cash flow is more present and immediate. They convert that to things such as an NFL pass or whatever. And what we can get into on our next call is talking more about this cash flow over time, and this sort of, what does it mean to have cash flow in your life, and how does that cash flow through? What are committed expenses? What are discretionary expenses? How does money get saved? And where does a house fit into this? Because this is a conversation you can have with a realtor, with a client, with anyone in any different way, as sound bites, as part of a larger conversation. But for you, you want to understand these dynamics because it makes you better in every area of your business, not just working with financial advisors, but working with your clients, learning how to translate that cash flow savings into wealth. And then, but again, tie it back into the fact that what they really value and are almost always looking at that immediate impact to cash flow, because cash flow is like blood flow, right? And from a financial flow standpoint. And what does it look like? And how does this stuff, how do you tell the story in a really compelling way?
So let's go into wrap up mode. So someone had just asked the question, how can I watch an independent link of this? This is live in our Facebook group, so we can get some questions and some feedback. And thank you for all the questions and feedback. And then this will also be posted in our YouTube channel, just like all of our content. And I'm going to start a playlist. I don't know what I'm going to call it. You know, I might call it Fiscal Literacy by Todd Ballenger. I don't know. I'll think about it, but we'll have a playlist so that the series that we're doing with Todd has a place. You know, I do want to remind folks, you know, there is a formal training program. So what this series by no means takes the place of that. And Todd, if you can stop sharing the screen real quick.
Sure.
Because I just think this is important. I mean, the first thing I want to urge you as a mortgage coach, the fact that you're watching this and you're in our channel, you see yourself as more than a loan officer. Hey, I can close a loan on time. I know underwriting guidelines. I can solve problems. I've convinced people to trust me that I can either refinance their home or I can help them buy this home. But, you know, as a mortgage coach, it's going beyond that transaction. And what Todd wants to do is he wants you to take even beyond that, like liability advisor, certified liability advisor. So if you want to get that training, I believe it's $1,500. As a mortgage coach, there's a $500 discount. You'll use the discount code MCVIP. Very important person. You're a mortgage coach, very important person to Todd Ballenger. So that will save you $500. And I can't recommend this enough. I mean, I even put a link to this in our new loan officer playbook. Well, I don't think a new loan officer in their first 100 days should become a certified liability advisor. I think you need to learn mortgage IQ, you need to learn how to close loans on time, and you need to learn how to be a mortgage coach. But once you've done about 100 TCAs, that's brown belt. One, you've done some loans. Two, you know how to give advice at a 101 level. You might want to become a certified liability advisor. And if you've been doing this for 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, I can't recommend it enough. It's one of the best ways that you can secure this decade in this business, because the machine is here. And if all you can do is, hey, what's your FICO score? This is what you qualify for. The machine can do that. Like machines can do refis. Machines can pre-approve people quickly and efficiently and deliver a predictable transaction. But a certified liability advisor can really help a family optimize the liability side and the asset side of the balance sheet. So Todd, any closing thoughts before we wrap it?
No, you just made a beautiful point. If you go to, there's a website, Will Robots Replace My Job? And the least likely job to be replaced is a teacher or educator. It's like got a less than 1% likelihood of ever being replaced by a robot. So if you think about what you're saying there, I mean, I can program all kinds of algorithms for so many different things, but that ability to communicate and converse and teach someone these concepts as part of what you're doing is something that clearly will differentiate you. And again, I encourage you to learn it, number one, for yourself, and then secondarily, learn it for your clients. And then ultimately, what you learn will allow you to build a whole new revenue stream from financial advisors that you probably never imagined.
And I want to put a caveat on that teacher piece. And that means that you need to teach people beyond what they can look up on Google. And you need to teach people beyond what they can do on Zillow. Like they can figure out their monthly payment on Zillow. They can figure out if they qualify for a loan on Google. So teaching people about transactional details, that's not what Todd's referring to. He's talking about something that people cannot easily just do a Google search and figure out. And when it comes to, I'm a family, I have my unique hopes, dreams, and goals. I live in a specific city, in a specific zip code, in a specific neighborhood. So personalize, localize, teach people how to manage both sides of their spreadsheet. Guys, that job will never go away. And if you can learn that job, you can have just a brilliant decade in this business and then some forever. I don't know that type of a mortgage professional will ever be obsolete. Hey, Todd, dude, thank you for the prep for this call. Thank you for giving a little free value. And I look forward to our next session like this.
Agreed. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, brother. Give us a like down below. Share this with your mortgage friends. And have a great day, everybody. Take care, y'all.
Bye.